What if believing in good and evil makes people evil? First of all, what is good and evil? We often talk like our own definition is commonly held, but I'm not sure we all mean the same thing. Is being nice to friends and family good, or is that just an evolutionary trait you find in all social animals? I often think that when you scratch at the surface of most good acts, you can often find a not too well hidden bit of self-interest. Others might say, well, what about giving to charity? There's no self-interest there. But what if it contributes to a system of dependence that often harms exactly the people it seeks to help? If your supposedly good act is making things worse, does the consequence or the intent matter more? And perhaps a bigger question, does morality even exist outside humans? If morality does exist outside humans, what defines it? Many people would say it's God, but that just creates another problem because there are lots and lots and lots of gods. So whose version of which God? Oh, it just so happens to be your God, does it? How statistically improbable and incredibly convenient. But if morality doesn't exist outside humans, that means we make things right or wrong. So maybe you're a moral nihilist and believe there is no inherent right and wrong in any act. But a word of warning, if you tell people you are one, it can make them uncomfortable, and they often ask if you're going to eat their baby, which has always struck me as weird because it somewhat suggests that they would really like to eat babies, but they don't because someone or something told them that it was wrong. Or you might be a moral relativist and believe that morality is relative to the belief system and culture that is judging the act. For example, if you were born in the 1800s, you'd probably have thought it was okay to own slaves. But as society progresses, our morals evolve. So nowadays, you know it's not okay to own slaves. Instead, you get other people to own the slaves and you just buy their produce. That's right, you, watching this. There is a statistical probability that the device you're watching it on was produced in part with slave labour. There's slave labour in the coffee you drink, in the chocolate you eat, and a staggering amount of the clothes you wear. Does that make you evil? I don't know. Maybe. And that's bad even by your own standards. And I bet you still don't think you're a bad person. So there must be a bit more to it than all this philosophical stuff. I want you to become aware of how you might have felt a fleeting moment of discomfort just now when I suggested that you were benefiting from slavery. That discomfort is called cognitive dissonance. See, us humans, we very much like to see ourselves as smart and good people, but we all occasionally do stupid or bad things and benefit from the bad things that other people do on our behalf. It is that clash between seeing ourselves as good and realizing that maybe we aren't, which causes cognitive dissonance, and we spend a lot of our lives making subconscious and semi-conscious choices to relieve and reduce it. The easiest way to feel good about ourselves is to be mostly good, which is why most people are mostly good. When we do give in to self-interest, most of us tend to cheat only a little bit. How much we cheat depends on our circumstances, our upbringing, and how closely we're being watched. When we do bad things, our memory gets hazy, or we let ourselves off because it was just that once, or they started it, or everyone else is doing it. We further maintain these pleasing self-perceptions by judging ourselves on our best moments and others on their worst. Our bad acts are an exception. Theirs are the rule. These mental gymnastics are what you might call cognitive or moral biases, and they drive us away from taking an honest look at ourselves by making us feel like a good person without actually having to be one. If you're there thinking, other people do that, but I don't, then you're doing it right now. That uncertainty about whether you're a good person, about whether good and evil even exist, causes more dissonance. That's why we react to suggestions we're wrong or bad by finding ways to become more certain that we are right, that we are a good person. The problem is this: the more certain we are, the worse we get. For instance, we don't mind people who are vaguely religious or kind of left-wing or are an atheist but they keep it to themselves. We usually quite like them because we can discuss things with them, even disagree with them. Their lack of certainty seems to make them good-humoured and bearable. But if you arrive at a dinner party and meet somebody who's very religious or extremely left-wing or a militant feminist, they're often downright unpleasant company. Their certainty makes them quick to anger and easy to offend, so we dread getting sat next to them. Thinking that they're right makes people mildly unpleasant, but what about the really bad stuff, the murders and genocides and cutting off bits of people's bodies? Having identified ourselves as right and been an asshole to people on the internet or at dinner parties becomes a kind of cost, a bit like an investment in our own identity. That makes it increasingly painful to think that we'd been wrong and made a fool of ourselves and identified with this cause so strongly. So we tend to escalate our commitment, often with increasingly unpleasant behaviour. To be right, we need others to be wrong. So we remain on the lookout for their bad behaviour, listening out for their lies and sharing news stories about the terrible things they do. Our unpleasantness to them makes us need to see those people as more evil, perhaps even powerful, because then our unpleasant acts aren't just acceptable, but necessary. Just look at all of the horrific things that are being done in the world, and they're so often being done by somebody who is certain they're doing the right thing. Think about the violence we see at political rallies, denying people access to healthcare or genital mutilation, driving cars into crowds of people, or worse, honour killings and genocides. The worst of acts are usually conducted with the best of intent. Oh, but you don't do that, do you? Well, what about when a person of privilege does something that we consider to be wrong? Shoots an animal, says something you disagree with, or sends a silly tweet perhaps. How even the most liberal of us will descend upon them like a pack of wolves and tear their life apart. The whole time telling ourselves we're doing the right thing. We all do it. It's part of the human condition. So what can you do to be less evil? Hold on to your beliefs less tightly. Be less certain about yourself, about what it means to be good, even about this. This isn't a truth, it's just a theory, because if you became certain of it, you might become a bit unpleasant too.